In this video, I would like to talk to you about loops. So when do we use loops and what are these things called loops? Well, we use this thing called a loop when we need to perform repetitive tasks. So we might need ACL to do the same instructions a million times, let's say. It doesn't make practical sense to copy and paste the same instructions a million times in our script. And so it is much better to tell ACL the instructions that we want to do over and over. Tell it those instructions just once, but then tell it to repeat those instructions many, many times. Now, if we want to successfully create a loop, we need to firstly be able to tell ACL when to start carrying out these repetitive tasks. So at which point should it start doing these instructions? We need to somehow trigger ACL to start doing these instructions over and over and over. We also need to tell it what these instructions or these tasks are that it must carry out. Must it go extract record 1 from a table and then record 2 and then record 3? What exactly is it it's supposed to do repeatedly? And we also need to be able to tell ACL when to stop. Okay, you've done those instructions, those repetitive instructions enough times, ACL, 100 times, 1,000,000 times, whatever it is, now stop. Because if you don't stop, in theory, ACL is going to carry on forever and ever and ever, just doing the same thing over and over and over. So tell ACL when to start doing it, tell it which tasks to carry out repeatedly, and tell it when to stop. Now, there are two main ways we can create a loop in ACL. Firstly, we can use what is called the loop command. And secondly, we can use what is known as the loop structure. Both of those things, the loop command and the loop structure, create loops, but they behave differently, and we use them generally in different circumstances. So let's start off with the loop command. The first thing we need to know about the loop command is that you can only use it if you have a group command. You are only allowed to use the loop command inside a group command. So in my example on the right-hand side of the slide, I've got the group command. It starts with the word group and it ends with the word end. And then inside this group, that X represents one or more instructions, not in the loop necessarily, or not in the loop at all. And then we have this actual loop starting. It starts with the word loop and it ends with the word end. So loop must have its own word end. Group has its own word end. Now notice it doesn't just say loop and end. It says here loop while something is happening. So we're basically saying we want to loop, we want to repeat these instructions, instruction 1, 2, and 3, while something's happening. This loop while kicks off the loop. So provided some state of affairs is in place, provided something has happened or is happening, start repeating these instructions. And of course, somewhere along the line, we are going to have to stop this loop. Now, I haven't indicated on this slide how to stop it or where to stop it. And I can tell you now the loop I've got here on my slide will not stop. It will carry on forever in theory. So I'll show you in ACL how to stop this loop. But the idea is if you want to use the loop command, you have to put it inside a group. The loop command has its own word end. You have to say loop while something is happening. Put the instructions that need to be repeated 10 times, 100 times, 1,000,000 times. And somewhere also tell this loop command to terminate, to stop repeating those instructions. I don't want to spend the next 20 years waiting for ACL to process those 3 instructions because I forgot to tell it to stop at some point. Right, so let's go into ACL and let's look at the loop command. Now I'm going to look at this employee master file. I've got a column here called full name. And I decide I need to create a new field. And this new field will contain only the first name, each person's first name. This is easy enough in ACL. I could use the split function or the clean function very easily. This would be a 1-minute exercise. However, for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to use the logical easy solution. I'm deliberately going to use the loop command. So I want to follow this strategy. I want to say to ACL, go to the first name in the first record and go substring this. Go get the first letter. And then substring it again, get the second letter, concatenate them, and substring that and get the third letter, and keep going and getting the letters and substringing them until you get to the space. When you get to that space, or just to the letter before that space, stop. You've now got the whole name. Let's save this first name in a column somewhere. So I'm going to need to loop because I'm repetitively saying, go to a letter, get the letter, concatenate now to another, go concatenate to another letter, go get a letter, concatenate, go get a letter, concatenate, go get a letter, concatenate. So I'm saying in English, in very bad English, but I'm saying in English, the same thing over and over and over. So this tells me I need a loop. So I'm going to create a script in my Z scripts folder, and I will call this get first name, the script. And of course, I'm going to write set safety off and set safety on. See, it would be nice if I could type. Now, the important thing with scripting and loops especially is you have to be systematic and you have to be logical. You have to follow the logic of everything that someone else does and what you do. And it takes a while to read a script, even if it's your own script. So you have to be very logical. You cannot commit something to memory blindly and not understand what you're committing to memory, because then it's not going to help you to write future scripts. So I need to obviously open a table. So I'm going to open this table called empmast. And I'm going to now say, all right, I want to use the loop command, which means I need a group. So I'm going to say group and end. Now, the group command, one convenient way to think of it, usually, is to imagine that it takes you to record 1, and when you're at record 1, you do whatever you need to. Then it moves you to record 2, and you do what you need to, and then moves you to record 3, and so on. That's not actually what happens, but if you think of the group command behaving like that, 99% of the time, it will help you to understand your script. So I need to go to record 1. So the group command will automatically start me off at record 1. And when I'm at record 1, I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to say, assign vCount, let's say, equals to 1. So I want to create a variable vCount and put 1 in it. The reason I'm putting 1 in here is because I want to go to the first letter of the name. I need that to be position number 1. Now I'm going to loop. So I'm going to write loop, and I'm going to write end. Now, it's fine for me to write it like this, but if I prefer, I can indent this if it makes it easier for me to read. So I need to say loop while something. And I'm going to say loop while vCount is less than or equal to vEnd. Now, vEnd, I haven't created such a variable. So if I run this, I'm going to get an error. So I'm going to quickly add a line after assign vCount equals 1. I'm going to say, let's have a look at creating a variable vEnd. I want to use the length function. I want to get the length of the full name, but remember that full name has spaces on the right. So the length is going to end up being all the letters, all the spaces. I need actually the length of only the name with the spaces in the middle. I don't want the spaces at the end. So I'm going to first alt trim this full name field. So I want the length of the alt trim full name field. So imagine this now. If I look at the name Carmen, the length of this whole thing actually would be, I don't know, 20. I'm not going to count. Now, this is actually not correct now that I'm thinking about it, because I need the length of just the first name. So what I should do is modify this, and I should maybe not use length. Let me just do this quickly. I should use the occurs function, to be honest. And I should say, sorry, not the occurs function, the add function. Okay, I want to find the first occurrence of a space in the full name field. Now, if I look at this name Carmen, C-A-R-M-E-N, that's 6 letters. So the first space is in position 7. So the length of this name is actually the position of that first space minus 1. So this is what I want my vEnd to be. So I'm saying I need to do something repetitively while vCount is less than or equal to vEnd. So vCount is equal to 1 at the moment. Or if I run the script, vCount will be 1. And the idea is I'm going to go to the first letter because vCount is 1. And then I'm going to go to the second letter. I'll have to change vCount so it becomes 2. And so on until vCount becomes, in the case of Carmen, 6. Then I can stop concatenating letters after I've gotten there. So let me go do this. I'm going to say, right, I want to create a variable v full name equals to, and I'm going to say I need to substring the full name. Starting in which position? Well, v count. V count is 1 in this case, and length 1. But this is going to give me, all right, let me leave that line 9 as it is at the moment. Let me make a mistake. Let me leave it like it is. Now, notice here, so there's a mistake in my line 9. I'll fix it later. But I've made a second mistake. I haven't changed v count so that it becomes 2 and 3 and 4 so that we later get the second and third and fourth letter. So this thing here says, while what's in v count is less than or equal to v end, keep doing that instruction. Even though it's wrong, that instruction, the point is I need to keep doing that. So I'm saying effectively, while 1 is less than or equal to, in the case of common, 6, do that. 1 is always going to be less than or equal to 6. So I'm going to be doing this instruction forever. I should have said, you know, at some point that becomes 2, then becomes 3, then it becomes 6. So eventually I have something like this in the background. Loop while 6 is less than or equal to 6, and then it will become a 7. I'll make sure it becomes that if I do this properly. Because 7 is never less than or equal to 6, it will stop at that point. But as I said, at the moment, I have forgotten to increase what's in v count. So v count is stuck on 1. Now, very often in most computer programs and in ACL under certain circumstances, if you run a script that has a loop and the loop carries on forever because you forgot, for example, to increase v count, you will just see, you know, circles, you know, the circle here going around and around and around forever and ever, and it keeps trying to process the same instruction over and over. And we might think that the loop command is going to do the same thing. Because I forgot to tell it, hey, v count must increase so that eventually we can stop this thing, it's going to give me the same result. But let me run this and see what happens. When I run it, I get an error. It doesn't run it forever. It says maximum loop count exceeded. And I'll tell you why it says that. Because, as I said, the group command, it's very convenient to think of it in terms of it takes you to record 1, then 2, then 3, and each time you get to record, you do what you need to. But the truth is that's not how it actually works. What it actually does is it creates separate slots in the computer's memory, and each slot has an instruction in it. So this instruction would have a slot in memory, this instruction would have a slot, this whole loop instruction, if we can call it that, has a slot, and so forth. Now, when I say memory, I'm talking about the computer's RAM. Now, your computer's RAM is limited. There's only so much RAM. So I have basically said, I need an infinite amount of RAM because I accidentally forgot to tell this loop when to stop. And the computer says, no, there's no such thing as an infinite amount of RAM. So ACL comes back to me and says, maximum loop count exceed. In other words, you're going to try and do this too many times, an infinite number of times. Sorry, there isn't enough RAM. So even if I did not make that mistake, even if I told it when to stop, if I told it to stop after, let's say, 10 million letters, now there aren't 10 million letters in a name, obviously. 10 million is probably going to be too much, too many times to do these instructions for my computer's RAM. So you will find even if you're not stuck in an infinite loop with the loop command, you will sometimes get that error message, maximum loop, let me just get that message again for you, maximum loop count exceeded, because what happens is the RAM is finite. Your computer's RAM is finite. Anyway, I need to fix this now. I need to say, all right, hang on. I need to increase what is in v count. So v count becomes whatever it is at the moment plus 1. So after doing the substring, I get that. Now I need to save the result of what's in full name. Now, line 9 is incorrect. It is incorrect at the moment. So I need to save this. Now, I'm going to save it by extracting. The thing is, should I extract inside the loop? So should I extract over here, for example? Should I put my extract command over here? The problem is if I do that, it's going to keep extracting every single time it gets here. So let me make a mistake. I'm going to say extract fields. Just to make life easy, I'm going to extract only 2 fields. I'm going to extract the full name. Let me call this first name rather. I'm going to extract the first name to a new table. And of course, that's a variable I'm extracting. So I'll rename the column and the field in the process during the extract process. So extract fields v first name as first name to, and I'll call this empmast new. And of course, you know, we can't open this table inside a group. So I will issue the open command here. So let's remember, let's recap. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to get a column with, for example, Carmen's first name. So I'm saying, or this is what I would want to say, go to the first letter, substring it, get the first letter. Then substring the second one, get that, and of course concatenate them. Go to the third one, substring that, concatenate that to CA, and stop when you get to the last letter. So that's why I needed to know when to stop. Find out where the first space is, subtract 1, that tells you the length of the name Carmen. I'm quickly going to say group if record number equals 1, just to make our lives easier. I want to see if my script gives me the first name Carmen only. I don't want to run through the whole table yet. So let's see what happens. So I get Carmen, but it's written down like that, vertically, because I extracted too soon. I said every single time you have a letter, a C, save it into that column. Now go, and when we loop again, when v count becomes 2, because of this line here, when v count becomes 2, go and extract the second letter, and of course, extract will append automatically inside a group. So that's why we get Carmen written down like that. I need Carmen, the letters C-A-R-M-E-N, to be next to one another. So this is in the wrong place. So you've got to be very careful what you put in a loop. When you want to save the results of your commands, in this case, the assign commands, from a loop, we generally put the extract command once the loop is finished. So I want to loop through the name Carmen, get C-A-R-M-E-N next to one another in this variable called v first name, and then extract the value of that variable to a column called first name. But let's see what happens this time. I only get the letter N, the last letter, because remember I told you I made a mistake here earlier. I have said first name is substring the full name, and I took, you know, the first letter, the C, but when we come round the second time, when v count is 2, we come round, and we're now taking the second letter only. So what this now becomes an A. I was supposed to concatenate, remember. Instead of concatenating, I just keep sticking the new letter in there and overwriting the existing one. So I need to say, whatever was in V first name originally, I need to concatenate that with substring. Now, there's going to be an error here. If I run this, let's see. Or there might be an issue, okay? I still get the N, something's not right. The reason is V first name doesn't actually exist before line 9. So how can I look at what's in V first name and add something to it? So I need to go up here and say assign V first name. And I'm going to do something incorrect, and I'm hoping to get a problem. If I don't, I'll still explain the issue. So I'm going to say make it a blank space, seeing that that's character, right? So I run this, and I get a blank space, and you go, what on earth is happening? Right. So I can tell you the problem is this. V first name has a blank space in because of line 8. When I come here, we might be thinking, okay, you're going to concatenate the blank space to an A. So maybe I should have done an altrim. And that is a sensible thing to do because we don't want that space in front of Carmen. Let's see if this fixes the problem. Now we have a C, but we don't have the rest of Carmen, even though V count did become 2 and 3 and so on. The reason is this: when you create this variable, ACL remembers, because of the way I created it, that it accommodates only one symbol. In this case, it accommodates one letter, the letter C. Okay, what is maybe better to do is to say, I'm going to use the blanks function and maybe accommodate 50 letters, 50 symbols. So this will help solve the problem. Let's see if it does. There might be some other issue. Okay. It's still the letter C, which is no good. Now, sometimes what happens is there could be something in your variables from the previous runs causing havoc. So just to make sure that's not causing a problem, let me delete all my variables. If necessary, I will delete this table and the file in the background. In fact, I'm going to delete that just in case. I'm doing this for testing purposes just to make sure that I haven't, that this is where the problem is, or to make sure, on the other hand, that I don't have a problem elsewhere. Let's just see what happens here. Okay, there we go. So the problem wasn't in here somewhere. The problem was in the computer's memory, so to speak, somewhere in that table or that file, all those variables. So I deleted all of them to clear out, ACL's memory, so to speak, so that it could give me the right result. Now I can run this again just to be sure, and I get common. Now let's just make sure we understand this. Okay, for the moment, I'm just looking at record 1. I want to look at all of them later. The reason I made vCount equal to 1 outside the loop is because if I put it inside the loop over here, vCount is going to become 1 every time. You might make a 2 here. So it's going to loop and say, okay, 2 is less than or equal to 6, the length of common, but then it becomes 1 again. You're resetting it to 1. You don't want to reset it to 1. You want it to be 1 only once for the name common. You want to work out the length of the name common only once, not repeatedly. You want to create a variable to hold the name common eventually only once. You don't want to create it repeatedly. That's inefficient. Now those two, if I create them repeatedly, it's going to cause processing inefficiency, but it's unlike, well, actually that one there won't cause a problem. That one there will cause a problem because it will keep resetting first name to blanks. It will destroy whatever I did in line 14. And this one will create a problem because it will keep resetting vCount to 1 in spite of my efforts down here to change it to 2. So you've got to read through the script carefully and understand the logic of every single line. You cannot do scripting, especially not loops, if you don't follow the logic. So I encourage you to read through the script and to do it from scratch on your own. And you'll make lots of mistakes if this is your first time doing this kind of thing. But you'll learn from those mistakes. Then you do the same exercise again, and you're going to make some of the same mistakes again. Or you might make a few new mistakes as well. And eventually you will stop making those mistakes. All right, so here I've got the first name. Now I'm going to remove this filter because I want the group command to go through the whole table and give me everyone's first name. Let's see if this works. All right, so it did work. Now, as I said, that's not the logical way to write a script to get everyone's first name. Rather, just create a computed field with the split function or the clean function. But if I decided for some reason to do it with the loop command, this is how I would do it. The loop command is useful when you need to go to a specific record. So in this case, I needed to go to each record, and you need to do something in that record repeatedly. So here I needed to go through the first name repeatedly. That's not obviously the best way to do this exercise, but in the real world, there are situations where there is no other option except to go through the loop command. So the loop command, think of it as the instructions basically work horizontally through a field or horizontally through a record, because the group command kind of keeps you in that record. That's how we normally think of the group command, as I said, even though it's strictly speaking not correct. So the loop command really is when you want to do things repetitively, but in one record, and then you need to move to a next record and then repeat the whole process. Now, the loop command obviously is not suitable if I have to do something too many times, because I'm going to run out of RAM. And if I need to go through this column down like that, but for a very different exercise, you might find that the loop command is not appropriate. Now, you're not going to know in advance, is the loop command going to help me to achieve my objective? Not if you don't have much experience using it. You're going to have to try the loop command and the loop structure sometimes, but with experience, you start seeing when the loop command may or may not work. I'll give you an example of when it won't work. If I decided to extract the records in this table to new tables, and I want to extract, let's say, 5 of these records to a new table, then I want to extract those 5 to a new table, and so on, the loop command won't actually work. Okay, it's unlikely that it's going to work for me. I would need to use the loop structure. Now, as I said, if you haven't done this kind of thing before, worked with the loop command, don't worry about it. You will start learning by bumping your head and making mistakes and getting frustrated in the office. You'll start learning when the loop command may or may not work. But you need to start understanding how the group command works, how the loop command works, and with that understanding and with the experience, you will be able to predict in advance, usually correctly, whether the loop command will work or not, whether it will be suitable or not for what you're trying to achieve. Anyway, so that is the loop command, a silly example. Now, let's suppose I want to loop, but I don't want to use the loop command for some reason. Maybe it's inappropriate for what I want to achieve. So I want to use the loop structure, let's say. Now, here in PowerPoint, I've got a typical loop structure. Now, firstly, notice all these funny things here. Those represent boxes. A variable is really like a box. It contains something, it holds something. I might have these boxes, these variables from other scripts that ran earlier. When you are testing a loop that you're busy scripting, it is often a good idea to delete all the old variables from the previous scripts, because trust me, they can confuse you to no end when you're trying to figure out, why is my loop not working? Are my variables wrong? Do they have the wrong values? And you won't be sure with all these previous variables from other scripts, which variables came from this current loop and from the previous loops and the previous scripts. It becomes very confusing, especially when you're tired. So it's a good idea often to delete those variables first when you test your loop structure. Now, a loop structure, not the loop command, requires you to use 3 scripts: a main script, an initialize script, and an instruction script. Now, my main script I've just called main, my initialize script I've called initialize, and my instruction script I've called say hello. The main script is very, very boring. I always tell people it is very standard, in other words. Now, I don't encourage people to commit things to memory in scripting as well, certainly not a consultant. But in the beginning, you could commit the main script to memory because it is so simple. It really, for the most part, has 2 lines: do script initialize and do script, the instruction script say hello, while flag equals false. Now, the main script's job is to coordinate everything. It makes sure that the initialize script does what it's supposed to. It makes sure that the instruction script say hello does what it's supposed to. And it makes sure they do what they're supposed to in the correct order at the correct time. So the main script will call the initialize script first. And the initialize script runs, and whatever it needs to do, in this case, those 3 instructions, it does them. And then the main script tells the say hello script to do whatever. But notice the second line. This second line is very different from the first line because of this while flag equals false. You do not have a loop if you do not tell this thing when to kick off and also to keep going. So while this thing flag, whatever that is, equals false, keep going. Now, I'm going to use arrows to show you how ACL would read these scripts. You would run the main script. So this script here, the first thing that would happen when I run the main script is ACL would see that instruction to script initialize, which means it needs to jump to the initialize script and do the instructions in there. Now watch these boxes, because I'm about to jump to the initialize script, to the first instruction there. It says delete all okay, delete all the variables. So all the variables from previous scripts are gone, because they might confuse me when I'm developing this loop and testing this loop. Now, what we need to do is create a variable. Now, I called my variable flag. Nowadays, I actually call it v flag, but I'll create a variable called flag. And in this variable called flag, we are going to put the word false. Now, some people think, why did you call it flag? No reason. I could have called it apple. Well, there is a reason, but there's no technical reason, right? ACL doesn't care if you call the variable flag or apple or Johnny. But in the ACL world, we adopt a kind of IFRS or GARP for ourselves. So that if I look at someone else's script in the ACL world and I see v flag, we actually prefer to call it v underscore flag. I know, oh, they're busy with the loop. The only time I see that variable called v underscore flag is if they want to kick off a loop. So I can see, if I just look at that one line, assign flag equals false, this person wants to do a loop. Then and it's very important that I have that, because if I don't have that, when I eventually return to the main script to do that line, do script hello while flag equals false, I'll get an error. You can't say, look at the variable flag to see if it has false in it. If you haven't created it, you'll get an error message. So the initialize script, its job is to create the variables that you're going to need in the main script and maybe in say hello, so that ACL doesn't complain later and say, what is this thing called flag? What are you talking about? What is this thing called vcount? What are you talking about? The initialize script, its job is also to delete certain things maybe. So in a nutshell, the initialize script's job is to lay the foundations, the basic groundwork. It's like when you build a house, you need the foundations before you put the roof and before you put up the walls and the ceiling and the roof and so on. The initialize script deletes things and creates variables and whatever else it is that we need to do once off the initial values only, the initial actions, so that we don't get errors in our main script and our instruction script, so that we have what we need when we get to the next part of our main script, when we get to our instruction script. So now I've created a variable called flag. I've put the word false in it. The next instruction we need to do is create a variable called vCount, and we need to put 1 in it. So we put 1 into that. Because what I want to do in this silly PowerPoint example is I want to count to the number 5. And when I get to the number 5, I'm going to be so excited that I've got to number 5, I'm going to say hello. So I've created a variable called vCount, and in there is a 1. Because later, when I get to my say hello script, I refer to this vCount. I can't say to ACL, look in the variable called vCount, check if there's a 5 in there. If I haven't created it, ACL is going to complain, what is this? Remember, initialize lays the foundation so that I don't get errors afterwards in my main script and in my instruction script. It deletes what it needs to. It creates the variables and other things it needs to only once, just with the initial values. Anything you want to do repeatedly, you got put into the instruction script. Anything you need to do only once, except obviously for the do script lines, you put into the initialize script. You do it only initially, only once. Right, so the initialize script, we've worked through it. The main script told us to come here. Now we need to jump back to the main script and to the next line. So the next line says do script say hello while flag equals false. So it doesn't say go for it, do the script say hello. It says wait, you need to check. If this variable flag has the word false in it, then you need to go do it. In fact, if flag has false in it, for 100 for 100 minutes or 10 hours, whatever, you need to keep doing that say hello script while flag is false. So I need to check what is in this variable called flag. Okay, I see there's a false in there at the moment. That means I have to go jump to the say hello script. So let's jump to the say hello script. And the first instruction there is this. If vCount equals 5, we need to say hello. Well, let me see, what is vCount? vCount is 1. Okay, it's not 5. I'm not going to say hello. So now let me go to the next instruction of say hello. If vCount equals 5, I need to change what's in this variable called flag. Well, I'm not going to change what's in flag because vCount, I noticed, is a 1. It's not a 5. So let me go to the next instruction. It says assign vCount equals to vCount plus 1. So whatever is in vCount, I need to increase that value by 1. So I'm going to carry out that instruction. That becomes a 2. And then I need to jump back to the main script because of this word while. If this word while wasn't here, we would basically say, okay, I've done do script initialize, do script say hello, end of the main script, end of everything. This word while says, come back to this particular line. We need to check if flag is still false because we need to keep doing this say hello script while flag equals false. So let me see, is flag equal to false? Yes, it is. I need to go back to say hello. Let me jump to say hello. So let's see, what does this instruction say? If vCount equals 5, I need to say hello. Is vCount equal to 5? No, I'm not going to say hello. What does the next instruction say? If vCount equals 5, change what's in flag. vCount is not 5, so I'm not going to touch flag. Next instruction says, change what's in vCount, increase it by 1. So vCount is 2 at the moment, so I need to increase it by 1 and make it 3. And then I need to jump back to my main script because I need to see if I need to do this again. While the flag is false, I need to repeat the say hello script. Is it still false? Let's see. Yes, it is. So I need to jump to say hello. And of course, vCount is not 5, so that doesn't apply. vCount is not 5, that doesn't apply. vCount will now become 4, and I jump back. Should I go do say hello again? Let's see, is flag equal to false? Yes. So while flag equals false, I need to keep doing this thing. This is repetitive. These instructions need to be repeated over and over and over. So if vCount equals 5, okay, no. Let's see, vCount isn't 5, so never mind that hello story. Is vCount 5? No, never mind that assign story. This I need to do. I need to increase what's in vCount. It becomes a 5. And I need to jump there. Now, some people say, oh, I need to say hello. No, you don't say hello yet because this instruction doesn't say, doesn't tell us to say hello. You've got to read the instructions line by line the way ACL does. ACL is very systematic. You can't just say in your head, oh, I must say hello, it's 5. No, no, no. You've got to follow all the steps until you get to the relevant script, to the relevant instruction. Okay, don't jump ahead in your head. Follow the instructions systematically. So should I do the script say hello again? I'm getting tired of doing it. It's repetitive, but that's loops, right? Well, let's see what's in this variable flag. Oh, it's false. So while it's false, I need to do say hello. Oh boy, here we go, back to say hello, first instruction. If v count equals 5, I need to do something. Let's see, is v count 5? Oh, it is. At least this is a break for me, a bit of a change. If v count equals 5, I need to say hello. All right, people, hello. So there we go, v count is 5. Next line. If v count equals 5, make flag equals to true. V count is 5, so I'm changing flag to true. You see that? Now, some people, again, in the heads, they jump ahead and say, oh, they said, well, v flag equals false, keep going. So we can stop now. No, you can't stop yet. We're still going. You need to follow the instructions. You need to read them systematically, the way ACL reads them systematically. So read the instructions. Don't jump to instructions in your head. Read the instructions carefully. So the next instruction is this. V count must become whatever it is plus 1. So v count is 5 at the moment. I need to increase it by 1. It becomes 6. We need to jump back to the main script. Because of this, while the flag equals false, I need to decide, should I do say hello again? Let's see what is in flag. Oh, true. Because somewhere in the past, in other words, somewhere in the say hello script, the last time I was there, we changed flag to true. Because it isn't false, I mustn't do say hello anymore, and therefore I can stop. That's it. It is very, very important that if you have a variable like v count to count, do this once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, that you increase that variable. It is important that you also do something, say, if something happens, I need to change what's in flag to true, so it will stop. If you forget that line, this thing will carry on forever. If you forget that line in this case, it will carry on forever because I'm relying on v count becoming 5. Now, not every script has a v count. Most do, because usually we count in a table, go to record 1, then record 2, then record 3, and so on. But occasionally, we don't need a v count. If you don't need to keep count of something, then don't create it. Create what's logical. So the main script is quite standard for most loops. It's really 2 instructions. Do script initialize, do script instructions while v flag equals false. The initialize script always will have assigned v flag equals to false. And then it may or may not have assigned v count equals to 1. It may or may not have other instructions. You've just got to see as you go along with your loop, with your exercise, what you need and don't need in initialize. And you'll find often some people, what they do is they are so determined to get the initialize script correct. They will sit for hours in there trying to figure out what to do. Don't sit in there for hours. Write the things you can think of quickly in initialize. Start with your instructions. Run your main script to test the loop. If something goes wrong, see what's wrong. And you might discover that the solution to whatever is going wrong is to add something to the initialize script. So you learn as you bump your head, oopsie, there's something else that needs to go into initialize. It's okay, it's scripting. There's always a back and forth in scripting as we discover new issues, new problems, new challenges. We solve them as they come along. Right, so let's go do a loop structure, a loop in ACL. So now we are going to create a separate folder for this loop. I find it's always easy to create a separate folder for a loop. And I'm going to call this folder extract invoices. I want to do something very simple. Well, it's simple in theory. It's complicated the way I'm going to do it. I want to extract all the invoices from the AR table to a new table. So far, so good. But I'm not going to do it the easy way. I'm going to say, let me go to record 1. I want to check if this is an invoice. If it is, I'll extract it to a new table. Now let me go to record 2 and repeat the process. Let me check if it's an invoice. If it is, extracted to a new table. Let me repeat the process in record 3. If it is an invoice, extract it to a new table. This is obviously a very silly way of extracting invoices to a new table because we could do this in 30 seconds, for goodness sake, if we did it sensibly. But I want to show you how to script a loop. So I'm going to create 3 new scripts. And of course, we need set safety off and set safety on as usual. Now here's a tip to save you a little bit of time. Once you've typed set safety off, set safety on in the script, press Control S to save this. Then, only then, do you copy and paste the script twice. Because if you do that, you'll see those 2 scripts already have set safety off and set safety on. So we can rename them. Now I'm going to call my first script A1 main. The reason I'm putting A1 in front is so that I can make sure the main script goes to the top. ACL doesn't care if it's at the top or at the bottom. It just helps me as a human being to follow my own logic when I look at the names of the scripts. If I see A1 main is at the top, I know that one runs first. Then I'm going to call this one A2 initialize. Oopsie, initialize. And I shall call this one A3 get invoices. Now, my main script, as I said, is reasonably boring. Even though I don't generally encourage people to, well, consultants at least, to commit scripts to memory. You could commit this to some extent to memory. It's quite an easy formula, write do script. And the script I want to run, I'll just quickly copy both of those into my script, is do script initialize. That happens once, only initially. And then the next script, do script A3 get invoices, needs to happen repeatedly while something happens, while vflag equals to false. I'm just going to make this smaller. Now again, you could make vflag equals to true initially, but we don't do that in the ACL world. As I said, it's like an if-else or garb of scripting that we adopt. It makes it easier to read our colleagues' scripts, makes it easier to follow our own logic. If you keep changing what you do, and sometimes you make vflag equals false, sometimes you make it true, you know, in line 4, you're going to confuse yourself. Just stick to a so-called if-else of scripting, right? So this is my main script done. I don't have to touch it again. It's very simple. Done. I don't have to touch it again. Now the initialize script, as I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all my old variables just for testing purposes in case I need to check what's going on in the variables if my script doesn't work. I don't want to get confused by variables from earlier scripts. And I definitely need vflag. And I need vflag to be false. It needs to start on false always, right? Think of it as the if-else of scripting. It helps you. Now, do I need a v count or don't I? Most scripts do. Now, let's just think. I want to go to record 1 of the AR table to check if it's a credit, an invoice. Then I want to go to record 2 of the AR table to check if that's an invoice. Then record 3. Oh, so I'm counting 1, 2, 3. Okay, I need v count. So assign v count equal to 1. Now, I know from experience what else to put in this initialize script, but let's say I'm learning this for the first time. So instead of spending hours looking at this initialize script, wondering what else must go in here, I'm just going to go for it and jump to my instruction script. Now, the instruction script contains the instructions you need to repeat. So I'm going to say, all right, I need to open the AR table. And then I'm going to do a filter. And this filter is going to say record number. Now, I can't just say record number equals 1 because remember, the instructions in this script, A3 get invoices, are going to repeat many, many times. The way I've written that line 4, it's going to look at record 1 every single time it repeats these instructions. What is the point of constantly looking at record 1? I needed to look at record 1 only once to see if it's an invoice, then look at record 2 the next time. So the record number I need to look at varies. So I need a variable. And I've got such a variable, v count. So ACL goes, see what's in v count. If it's a 1, look at record 1. If it's a 2, look at record 2. If it's a 3, look at record 3. Now, remember that the if command in ACL always looks at record 1, even if we have a filter telling it to look at a different record. So I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to say, I'm going to extract whatever that filter is showing me to a new table called temp. And I can quickly remove this filter because I've now got the temp table. And then I will open the temp table. Right? So I will have only one record in the temp table. So if v count is 1, in the temp table, I will see record 1. If v count is 2, I will see only one record in the temp table. That would be record 2 of the AR table. Because remember, even if I repeat these instructions a million times, the extract command overwrites by default. This is not the group command where extract appends automatically. Here it's going to overwrite automatically. So I want to now look in this temp table at record 1 or record 2, whichever record is in there at that point, and check if it's an invoice. So now I can say if, right, let me just put a line up here so it's easier for me to read. If the transaction type is an invoice, I want to extract that to a new table. So I want to extract that to, let's call it invoices. Now, I'm going to make a few mistakes here. So I want to test to see if this works. So let me right click on this main script and choose run so I can see what happens. And I'm looking at this thinking, okay, It's jumping around what's going on. Now, it will jump around like this if you work your way through the whole table, but it will also jump around like this if you're repeating this instruction an infinite number of times. I'm stuck in an infinite loop here. I forgot to change V count to 2 and to 3. I forgot to tell ACL to change V flag to false to true at some point. So this thing's going to carry on forever, partly because V flag is stuck on false forever. So I need to press the escape key on my keyboard, and I'm going to say, yes, I am sure I want to cancel the script. So it's all very well having the instructions I need to repeat here, but I need to say, hang on, I need to check if it's time to stop. So if V count equals, now, in this AR table, I have 772 records. So I'm tempted to type that, but never do that. When you use the loop structure, never do this. Trust me, you want to test the loop for only a few records at a time. So I'm going to test this for only one record. I'm going to say, if V count equals 1, in other words, if I've looked at record 1 only and done check to see if it's an invoice, if V count equals 1, I want V flag to change to true so that when I get back to my main script eventually, this thing stops. If you let this thing run for all 772 records, you're not going to be sure if you're sitting here waiting for a long time at your computer, you're not going to be sure if it's working and it's still getting to record 772 or if you're stuck in an infinite loop. And if there are errors, you're not going to pick them up easily. Trust me, don't be overly confident. In other words, don't be arrogant. When you write a loop, when you script a loop, in other words, you use the loop structure, test it on one record, then the first two, then the first three, and so forth, until you are reasonably confident everything works and you've found out all the issues. So I'm going to say when V count equals 1, flag becomes true. And because I know that later I need to look at record 2, I'll quickly add this line before I forget. V count must become 1 plus 1 become 2. All right. So this should stop, but I want to see if I get an invoices table. Let's see what happens. I run the script and I get this error message. You may not delete or change V count as it is referenced by the current global filter. Now remember, my script was in an infinite loop. I pressed escape. Now, when you press escape, you don't know where ACL is going to stop that script. It depends on where it is at that point. When I press escape, ACL had a filter, this filter, in my table view, rec no equals V count. And when I run my main script, it eventually calls initialize, and initialize tries to delete V count. And your script is complaining now saying, no, you can't delete V count and change it in any way because the filter is using it. So if you press escape to stop the script, go check, do you have a filter active in the view? Take your mouse if you do have one, remove it, and then run this. Now, this is also why I have this line 6, by the way. After using that filter in the view, for whatever purpose, get rid of it, because I don't need this. Now, I've got this not because I have that, or not because I forgot that it's there. I've got this because I did not remove the filter from the view. I'll click OK. I might get lucky and this might run. No. Okay. So I'm just going to make sure there's no filter, right? There's no filter in AR. I'll run this again because I don't want to confuse myself. I want to make sure that this is doing what I expect it to do. I'm going to run this again. And now we get a temp table. Some people go, what's going on? This is an invoice. For goodness sake, open your eyes if you're doing that. Look at the table name. This is not the invoices table. This is the temp table. This says only one record, record 1. I isolated this. I could look at it with the F command to see if it's an invoice. It's not an invoice. Because it's not an invoice, we are not going to extract anything to the invoices table. So if you say, but there's no invoices table in here, you're right. It appears at this point that the script is working, because I would be shocked if I got an invoices table at this point, because record 1 of AR is a credit note. So I'm feeling quite confident, but not arrogant. Please don't feel arrogant. So don't say, oh, okay, it's working on 1, make it 772. That is foolishness. That's real arrogance. Let's say I'm going to test this for 2 records. So I'm going to do this instruction. I'm not going to stop, change V flag to true when V count reaches 1. I'm going to make V count equals to 2, come back here, do this. And when I get to line 11 the second time, I'll say, oh, V count is 2 now, by the way, make V flag equals to true. So when I get back to the main script later on again, for the 3rd time, I think it is, then your script will stop running. So I want to see if I get the desired result. Now I need to know my data. If I look at the first two records, right, there's one invoice there between the two of them. So I should, if the script works correctly, I should get an invoices table with one invoice. So let me run the main script. This is a loop, run the main script. It coordinates things. So I'm going to run that. Let's see what happens. So I'm just going to double click invoices. I have got an invoice, perfect. So I'm feeling very good about this. Don't run it on all the records. Don't be that arrogant. Let's try it on 3. For goodness sake, do not be arrogant when you are scripting a loop. Please don't be arrogant. Some people go, I'm confident. No, you're idiotic if you run it too soon on the whole table. So let me run this now for the first 3 records. Now, before I do that, let's see, what do I expect to see? I expect to see, based on first 3 records, an invoices table with 2 invoices. So I'm going to run the main script. Always the main script. It coordinates the whole thing. It holds the whole structure together. So run that. Let me open my invoices table. And I only see one invoice. I see an invoice for 180. And if I look at AR, it's this invoice. So let's think about what happened. Now, this is where you've got to be logical. You've got to read what you told ACL. I extracted at some point record 2 to the temp table. So I extracted this invoice at some point to the table. And I said, if it's an invoice, extract it. And you saw when I tested this for 2 records, we did end up with an invoices table with that invoice for that amount. Now I come back and I do this again because I'm only going to stop this after I've been through 3 records this time. And I check record 3. Is this an invoice? Yes, it is. Extract that to the invoices table. Now the invoices table already has data in it. And remember the extract command, there you go, automatically overwrites what's in that invoices table because I did not put this inside a group. It doesn't append automatically. So what I need to do is I need to say, hang on, this is not a group. So it's going to overwrite. I actually need an invoices table with all the invoices. I forgot that I need to say append to force extract to append outside of a group. Fine. So let me run this now to see if it works. Don't be arrogant and say, oh, this will fix it. No, test it. So I'm going to run this. And don't start panicking, oh, there's only one invoice. This is the wrong table. Open the invoices table. And instead of seeing 2 invoices, I see 3. And notice here, this one's duplicated. The reason is this one was in your table earlier. And when you appended these 2 from the last time you tested your loop, it goes and appends them to the existing result. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of this data before we append so that we don't duplicate this nonsense. Now I'm going to make a mistake. And a lot of people make this mistake to say, okay, I'm going to go delete, this table here. So let me maybe go to the top of my instruction script. And, some people will argue about where it should go. No, it should go further down or wherever. Let me just put it at the top here. I'm going to say delete this table, the format called invoices, because that should fix the problem, right? This is what my logic tells me. I will have no invoices table. Therefore, I will be able to append perfectly well all the, those 2 invoices from records 2 and 3. Let me run this and see if I now get 2 invoices in the invoices table. And when I double click that, the situation is worse. I've got more duplicates. And this is because I forgot something that people often forget. There is no data in this table. This table is a window. It is a view. The data is sitting outside ACL. It's not in ACL at all. It's like looking through a window at a tree. Just because you can see the tree doesn't mean it's in the room with you. Okay? If there's a tree in the room with you, it's a different kind of a tree and you shouldn't smoke it. So this is a window effectively. This is a window I'm looking through. So the data is being appended to the file that is outside of ACL. So I need to go delete the file as well. So we delete the table because we don't want it hanging around with no data in the background. And then we can delete the file as well, invoices.fil. Let's run the main script and see if this works. Okay, let's see the invoices table. Now, good news, we don't have all those duplicates. Bad news, we only have one invoice. And the reason is this. We are deleting the nonsense that we had inside the instruction script. Remember, this instruction script repeats. In this case, it repeats 3 times. So we're deleting things 3 times. Instead of deleting whatever nonsense there was once, we deleted the nonsense, and then we deleted the invoices table that had the correct invoice. This should have been done only once. And remember what I said earlier, if you need something done only once, for the most part, put it inside Initialize. If you need to lay the groundwork so you don't have drama afterwards, put it in Initialize. I need to delete whatever is in my invoices table and in that invoices file in case I start appending to it later on in instruction script. I need to avoid drama and I need to delete this only once. I don't want to delete my results. You have to think logically about where you put things like assign and delete, depending on what it is you want to achieve. So I'm going to run my main script again. Now, do you see why it's important to test this on record 1, then record 2, then record 3? Because often you keep picking up new errors. You didn't realize there were other issues until things start falling apart. If you had run this on 772 records, who knows where you would have ended up. So let's run this. And don't get confused. This is a temp table, open invoices. There are 2 invoices. That's good news, those 2. But I'm nervous, so I'm going to run the main script again just to make sure I'm getting the right result. Do I still have those 2 invoices? Yes, good. Now, normally I run a script 3 times, but I can tell you this is now correct. So if I'm still nervous, I can say, okay, I'm a bit braver than I was earlier, but I'm not too arrogant. I'm going to run this on 10 records. Now, let me just check. The AR table, if I look at the first 10 records, right, has how many invoices? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if my script works correctly, I should have an invoices table with exactly 5 records. Run your main script. Too many people test that script. Run the main script. It coordinates everything. So run this. Let's see what happens. Okay, what's in the invoices table? Exactly 5 invoices. And you can run the script again and again on those 10 records. You get the same result. It's working. So I can see it's working. Logically, it makes sense to me now why it's working. Now I can say, let's run this on the whole table. So I'm tempted to write now 772 because there are 772 records in the AR table. Now that's all well and good. Your loop will work correctly to give you an invoices table based on the AR data you have this month. But remember, you want to reuse the script for next month's AR data. How many records will there be in the AR data next month? Well, unless you have a crystal ball, you don't know. You might have 800, you might have 6,000. So what you've got to do is say, that thing varies. So I'm going to say, don't stop necessarily at 772, stop at vend, stop at what's in that variable. But if I run the script, I'll get an error message because what is vend? Oopsie, I need to go to initialize to create this variable just once so we know where to stop. So do you see I keep going back to initialize as I realize there are more issues, and I need to put something into vend. Now, I can't just say assign vn equals 772. That's pointless. So I'm going to say open the AR table so that I can count how many records there are in there this month, and then assign vend equal to, well, whatever is in the variable called count1, which is created, as you know, when you run the count command. Whatever's in the count1 variable, copy it into vend. So this will now work in theory actually it will work every single month, right? So I'm going to run the main script. Let's see what happens. Now you're going to see the circle jumping a lot. Now I'm not stressing, I'm not panicking going, oh, is this an infinite loop or not? I know this loop will stop because I tested it for one record, it stopped. I tested it for 2, it stopped. I tested it for 3, it stopped. I tested it for 10 and so on, it stopped. So I'm confident this is going to stop. This is also why we test these loops so thoroughly. So we don't panic when we see this thing, now processing on and on and on and on going, oh, is this an infinite loop? We don't panic. We know it stops. It's going to take longer to run because I'm not looking at only 3 records or 10 records. I'm looking at 772. Now, remember, the logical way to do this particular exercise to get the invoices out is just to simply say, extract record to invoices if you type equals IN. 1 line, done, and the instruction will run in a second. The way I'm doing it here is very inefficient. You can see I'm still waiting for the result. Loops are extremely inefficient, especially the loop structure, because there's no group command to speed it up, right? These are incredibly inefficient. So wherever possible, we avoid it like the plague. If I can find a solution to extract the invoices to an invoices table that doesn't involve a loop, trust me, I'm going to use it. And of course, there is one. I'll give you two examples where the loop structure is absolutely essential. There's no way around it. Not even the loop command will help you. One scenario is if I need to export, let's say from the AR table to multiple files. I need to export the first 100 records to one Excel file, the next 100 records to a separate Excel file, and so on. The only way I'm going to be able to do that is with this loop structure. Nothing else in ACL will work. Another example where I need to use this loop structure is when I import multiple files. We use it a lot for that. So how many files has the client got? Well, it depends on the month. So you just need to say, keep looping ACL, keep importing until you've gone through the whole list of files. So there might be 100 files this month, the next month there might be 150, the month after that 92, and so forth. You've got to just say, keep looping until you get to the end and you've imported all the files. So those are two good examples of when nothing in ACL will work except the loop structure. Now, when we say in ACL, by the way, I'm scripting a loop, we generally mean the loop structure. When we want to say I'm using the loop command, we tend to say I'm using the loop command. But it's not a big deal. You can always clarify and explain to someone. Now, to understand the loop structure, you need to do this exercise over and over. Another good exercise for you to do with the loop structure is to get running totals. Go to the AR table and say, okay, if we assume these are all the same customer, what is the balance of this customer after the first transaction? What's the balance of the second transaction, so on? Using the loop structure, it's not the best way to do it. A better way to do it is to use the group command without any loops at all. But to practice, do that as well. Another exercise you can do is, as I said, extract these to different files. Extract the first 100 records to an Excel file. Then extract the next 100 records to a different Excel file, and so on. And name the Excel file something like AR1 to 100 for the first 100 records. Then the next Excel file will be called AR101 to 200, etc. And it will give you practice. You need to practice the technique of getting these loops right for the times when you have no option except to use them. We do avoid them like the plague because they are so inefficient. But when we are forced to use them, we make sure we know how to use them. All right, I hope this video on loops, the two types of loops, how they work, helped. Please practice, practice, practice. That's the only way. Logic, logic, logic. Do the same scripts over and over and over on your own, because the more you do the same scripts, the more you make the same mistakes in the beginning, the faster you learn from those mistakes, and the sooner your skill and your logic with loops improves, and the sooner you stop making those mistakes, and the faster your scripting of loops becomes. Okay. Well, that's it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed the previous videos, and I hope you enjoy future videos.